She goes, well, it doesn't. I said, look again. That's ridiculous. How does it help? And I said, does him working, does that provide an income? Well, yes. And do you have a beautiful home? She goes, well, yes, we have a 7,000 square foot home. I said, and that has something to do with him at working. If he wasn't working, would you have that home? She goes, no. Do you love that home? Yes. And is this something that you love and feel proud of? Yes. And does he help furnish this thing? Yes. And does that come from his money? Yes. And have you put pressure on him to make sure that house looks great and so he's having to work? Well, I guess so. I said, and do the kids have a great education? Does that take money? And I just kept making links between the obvious things you would think, but she'd shut it down because she kept projecting her values. And as she started making the links, I said, well, how are you raising family and dedicating your life so diligent to the kids, helping his business? She goes, well, I don't know. I said, look, do they look well and dress well and present well? So if in the social settings it's a representation of his success, and does that, the women who see that and the other people who see that, does that make them go, well, he's successful, we could do business with him, he's probably stable? Does that allow, when you have people over and have social events, does that make them make the deal sometimes and close the deal? Is it possible? She said, well, yeah, he has social friends over. I said, is it possible you've made him millions of dollars possibly in his business because of just who you are and what you're doing? And she goes, I think so. And I made these links to the top 5 of his values and the top 5 of her values. And then I trained her, I spent the whole afternoon showing her how to articulate what was important to her in terms of what was important to him, until she felt confident. And then we closed the session.
Articulate what was, say that one again.
Articulate what was important to her in terms of what was important to him. That's what call caring is. And that's what keeps the ring on the finger, caring. So anyway, I spent the whole day. She left about 6 o'clock, or I left about 6 o'clock. She flies back to Ohio from New York City, because I lived in New York City at the time. And amazingly, I got a letter from him about 2.5 weeks later. And it basically said, Dr. Demartini, wow, whatever you did with my wife, all I can say is thank you. It's like we've got a totally new relationship. It's completely refreshed and renewed, et cetera. And I said to myself, if you only knew. And he's sitting there accolading and thanking me and everything else. But what he did is he paid me thousands of dollars to sit in a hotel room with his wife all day long, teaching her how to get whatever she wanted from him.
Oh my goodness.
But what it really was is, because when you really care about somebody, you'll figure out how to communicate what's truly important to you in terms of them, so neither one of you have to sacrifice. If you're having to sacrifice in your relationship, it's because you don't know how to communicate. In my book, Heart of Love, I give people how to do that, how to communicate, how to link the values, how to identify the values, how to communicate, how to break down all the baggage in the past, and how to feel love and gratitude again for them, and renew the intimacy that you have. And when a person does that, and they communicate that way, the relationship can last as long as both of them have a vision to do so. Now, if for some reason you start letting things slide, you disempower areas of your life, you start not taking care of yourself physically, you not take care of yourself, your business. I mean, I had a guy that was 18 years marriage and then went through a real calamity in his finances during the dot-com era and lost everything. His wife left him within 6 months. They divorced because he didn't have financial security anymore. He was doubting himself. He was insecure. He was beating himself up, and she just couldn't handle that. Because what she wanted is a stable, strong, financially secure guy. So her values were threatened, so she left.
What about the inevitable stuff that comes up in the course of a relationship? I mean, just how do you address that? The reactiveness, or that kind of thing that comes up. What's your take on that?
Well, the reactiveness are usually little buttons that we have, misinterpretations many times of what's going on. I always say anything that we have an emotional reaction to is our button. So it's never what anybody does to us. It's what we do to us by our perceptions.
And what do you do with that?
Well, let's say somebody comes home and they're late. Okay. And I've had this many times. People come and say, well, they're always late. They're always at work. They're not there for me. I go and make them this big dinner and they're late, as an example. Maybe a woman's cooking and a man's late. Okay, well, the thing is, the man has got a set of values. And he is making decisions according to those values, always making decisions according to it, just like she is. Now, she may be sitting there all day long thinking, well, he's going to come home and she may have got a romantic dinner set up and maybe candlelight and roses and everything else, may have done something really nice. And then he's late. So she's mad because she has projected an expectation according to her values onto him.
Right.
But he's sitting there making a decision, and let's say his highest value is business and finance. And all of a sudden, at 5 minutes before he was planning on leaving, the biggest deal of his life calls.
Right.
And he's going, if I do this, I can get that house for her.
Right.
You know what I mean? We can afford the house finally. Right. So he may be even thinking about her, but he's also thinking in terms of his values. Now, when he comes home, he's sitting there going, oh man, I'm so excited, I got this big deal and everything else, and then crunch. And because she's projecting onto him the values, he's just living according to his values, and he does the same thing back to her. He comes home, and maybe he has a set of values and expectations, and she is making decisions according to her values. So I always say that we are automatically betrayed if we project our values onto others and expect them to live according to ours.
Say that one more time.
We'll always be betrayed whenever we project our values onto somebody else and expect them to live our values. And nobody's committed to you or me. They're committed to their values. And we're in relationships as long as we provide a value to them.
Yeah.
So if you want a long-term relationship, you just got to keep on the cutting edge of what is in the competition and provide more value than anybody that comes along. And by default, they stay with you.
It's fabulous. But let's go back to that situation of the husband and wife, and she's angry. So what can happen in that so that that doesn't play out as...
Well, first of all, you don't want to live in a fantasy. One of the fantasies that I mentioned in my book, The Heart of Love, is that you're supposed to be peaceful all the time. And this is a fallacy. No family, I've interviewed literally thousands of families. There's no such thing as a peaceful family. There's a peace and war family. There's a kind and cruel family. There's a nice and mean. There's always a pair of opposites. And so anytime you have this fantasy, you're supposed to have this calm and peaceful, everybody's supposed to get along, you live in a fantasy.
This is important. Okay.
This is fantasy.
Yeah.
Because the reality is you have two different value systems. And even though you learn to communicate in those value systems, you may forget to, and you're going to have challenges. Or you may have somebody else in the equation with a totally different set of values. So you can't be two people, can't be pleasing both of them at the same time if they have different values. So you're going to have conflict, and you're going to have cooperation, you're going to have nice and mean and kind and cruel. I think that there's an impossibility of a relationship if you're both fantasizing that they're both supposed to support you. I just had a lady the other day that was in Las Vegas just 2 days ago. And she was angry at her ex-husband and just bitter and bitter and bitter. All he did is criticize me. All he did is criticize me. And I said, all he did is criticize. I said, all he did. I want to make sure that's real. All he did. So he didn't sleep. He just criticized you. Well, no, he slept about 8 hours. Okay, so the rest of the time, from the morning you get up to the time you go to bed, he criticized. Well, no, he was at work another 8 hours. So then you have about 8 hours together. Well, no, because he was out or I was out. So you had about 2 hours, 3 hours. How many hours a day? About 2 hours a day. So the entire day he criticized? Well, no, sometimes he's playing with the kids. We narrowed it down. It came out to be about 3 times a week for about an hour they would have a tough or something, you know. So she started out with this general statement, he's always criticizing me. We narrowed it down to occasional moments of criticism. We found out when we isolated those moments that she was doing something that was challenging his values. He had already gotten a bunch of praise at work and was puffed up and needed humbling. And so that was why they're playing the role. And she just got acknowledged there in her social group that she had, and so she was puffed up. So when two people come home puffed up, they're going to nail each other. Because we're not here to be puffed up and exaggerate ourselves. We're here to love and be ourselves. So what happens is...
you call that equilibrating.
Equilibrating, yeah.
Yeah.
I would say
that's part of the breakthrough experience.
The purpose of relationships is not happiness. Nobody ever gets happiness by itself. The purpose of relationship is equilibration. So if you exaggerate yourself and puff yourself up, they bring you down. If you go below and get really humbled and minimize yourself, they lift you up. They're there to try to make you authentic. So if you go into the relationship knowing you're here to be authentic, if you're going into the relationship knowing there's going to be support and challenge, nice and mean, give and take kind of thing, you have more realistic expectation. And if you know that they're only going to live according to their values and all decisions are going to be according to their values, again, you have more realistic expectation. You are definitely going to have a longer lasting relationship if you have those realizations and expectations.
Yeah. So stuff is going to happen. There's going to be anger sometimes. There's going to be resentment. It's part of... Well,
anger is unmet expectation. So anger that you're experiencing is because you've projected an expectation that's not matching their value system. Because they're only making decisions according to their values. It's that simple. I mean, I was the other day, I was working, and I finished a seminar about 7 o'clock. I had an 8 to 9, 9 to 10 consult, and I had a dinner literally at 10 o'clock. And that dinner ended up being kind of a meeting that went on to like 1 o'clock in the morning. Well, I was in Las Vegas, which is 2 hours difference than Houston. And I called my girlfriend, and I didn't want to wake her up, you know, at that late. But at the same time, if I don't call her, she'd prefer me call her, you know, just to say goodnight or tell her I love her or something. So I called her, and she says, "What time is it?" And she, in her mind, because in her mind, she thought 2 hours was the other side. So she thought it was, when it was 1 o'clock, it's 3 o'clock, she thought it was 5 in the morning. She said, "Well, why are you calling at 5 o'clock in the morning?" And because she had an unrealistic expectation or misinterpreted the time, she was wondering why I'm calling at 5 o'clock. So she said, what are you doing up at 5 o'clock in the morning? Are you just getting up? And I said, well, no, I'm just going to bed. It's 1. And when she got that, she calmed down. She was kind of, why are you up at 5?